Rapid climate change and global warming have sped up the melting of the frozen, icy landscapes of planet Earth. The alarming rate at which the glaciers around the world and the thick layers of ice in the Arctic and Antarctic continents are thawing is bound to affect the stability of the planet as well as its ecosystems. But this melting ice is also unraveling some mind-boggling historic secrets. Scientists, archaeologists, and even random people have discovered some incredible things frozen in ice. After all, there is a lot of ice in the world. The Antarctic ice sheet alone covers around 14 million square kilometers and contains about 26.5 million cubic kilometers of ice. And there's evidence of ancient human settlements as well as an array of incredibly resilient microorganisms colonizing the permafrost in it. Did you know the Antarctic ice sheet also holds approximately 61% of the Earth's fresh water? That's a lot. The melting of prehistoric ice has brought to our knowledge some freakish creatures, historic tragedies, alien microorganisms, war memorabilia, and a few puzzling mysteries the greatest minds of our time have failed to solve. From invaluable artifacts to strange viruses and ancient humans frozen in time, all sorts of unfathomable things have been discovered in the vicious, cold corners of Earth in recent decades. And today we're going to tell you all about these astonishing finds, some of which are actually pretty frightening, so make sure you watch till the end. Number 1. Mummified woolly mammoth. Every Ice Age fan out there knows about the woolly mammoth, a massive ancient mammal that roamed our planet thousands of years ago. The perfectly preserved remains of a mummified woolly mammoth were discovered by a reindeer hunter and his sons in the frozen Russian peninsula on the bank of the Urabay River. The hunter wanted to do the noble thing and hand over the specimens to the local museum, but his cousin got greedy and sold it behind his back. Fortunately, the scientists were able to track down the person who bought the mummified mammal and recovered the remains that were surprisingly still pretty well preserved. Researchers concluded that this baby mammoth has been frozen for approximately 40,000 years. They've named her Lyuba, which means love in Russian. Her body has been subjected to rigorous testing and analysis as scientists want to find out as much as they can about her. She was between 1 or 2 months old when she died, probably by suffocating in the soft river mud. Her CT scans revealed that there were significant amounts of mud in her trunk, mouth, and trachea. She also had an intact fat hump, which, according to the scientists, helped regulate the heat in her body. An endoscopy and the samples obtained from her organs revealed that she had consumed her mother's milk and feces. Experts believe she ended up at the location of her discovery by the movement of water and ice in the river after her body had eroded out of the permafrost, and the real location of where she lay frozen for 40,000 years might never be discovered. Number 2. Ötzi the Iceman. Ötzi is considered Europe's most famous mummy, and for all the right reasons. His remains were discovered by some super lucky German hikers. They found his body on the edge of a lake in the Ötztal Alps on the 20th of September 1991. He was lying face down on the ice, probably waiting to be spotted by someone. After initial analysis, scientists explained that this body was at least 5,000 years old. Detailed studies then revealed that Ötzi was between 25 to 35 years old when he died. Previously, the experts thought that Ötzi had fallen victim to the harsh environment and died from exposure, but later they realized that the reality was quite different. According to scientists, X-ray analysis of his bones revealed that an arrowhead was lodged in his left shoulder, and the blood loss from this injury was probably what became the cause of his demise. Scientists also believe that Ötzi wasn't a particularly healthy man, and from his body, they found evidence that he suffered from arthritis and whipworm infestation. Ötzi's body and his belongings are extremely important discoveries, and they have revealed quite a lot about the Neolithic lifestyle. Currently, Ötzi's body and belongings are being kept in a customized cold chamber in the South Tyrol Museum of Archaeology in Italy. If you want to get a closer look, you can visit the museum and admire the strange man who lived 5,000 years ago with your own eyes. Number 3. Glacier Girl. While it seems a title given to a lady, Glacier Girl is actually the name of a plane. The backstory of this plane might help you understand why it's being given this name. Glacier Girl is actually a Lockheed P-38F Lightning fighter plane from the World War II era. Back in July 1942, poor weather and limited visibility compelled the 6 P-38 fighters of the 94th Fighter Squadron to return to Greenland en route to the British Isles. This happened during Operation Bolero. They had to make emergency landings on the ice field due to the situation at hand. The crew members were eventually rescued, but the Glacier Girl, along with 5 other fighters and 2 B-17 bombers from the bombardment squadron, had to be left behind. These planes got buried under 268 feet of snow and ice over the coming decades. About half a century later, in 1992, the plane was brought to the surface again by members of the Greenland Expedition Society, who had spent years searching for it. The aircraft was transported to Middlesboro, Kentucky, where she was restored to flying condition. After the plane was fixed, it returned to the air in October 2002. The Glacier Girl can now be seen at air shows in the USA, while expedition teams plan to recover the remaining planes from the ice too. In July 2018, Ken McBride and Jim Salazar reported that they had found another P-38 in the glacier. Number 4. Inca Children. Popularly known as La Doncella, this mummified body of a teenage girl who died almost 500 years ago was unearthed by archaeologists in 1999 in Argentina. Analysis of the body revealed that she didn't die a natural death. In fact, it seems like she was the subject of a ritual sacrifice performed in the Andes Mountains. When her body was found, her head was adorned with a characteristic headpiece, and she was dressed in a traditional-looking tunic. Also, she wasn't found alone. There were 2 other mummified bodies belonging to children found with her. Together, the 3 mummies are called Children of Yuyayaco. According to experts, the girl, along with the 2 children, was left on a mountaintop to succumb to the cold as offerings to gods. Scientists also revealed that they had been fed corn liquor, probably to put them to sleep. Fragments of cocoa leaves were also found around her mouth. These leaves were chewed by the Inca people to mediate the effects of altitude sickness. This discovery has revealed rich details of the Inca lifestyle. The High Country Archaeological Museum in Salta, Argentina, displayed La Doncella to the public, but the mummies of the 2 children were kept in storage for further research and analysis. Number 5. 30-years-old seed. In 2007, the seeds of a plant named Selene stenophylla were discovered by a team of Russian, Hungarian, and American scientists near the banks of the Kolyma River. This is a flowering plant native to Siberia, and according to experts, the seeds were buried by an Ice Age squirrel. Both mature and immature seeds were found entirely encased in ice at a depth of 38 meters below the permafrost. These were surrounded by layers that included mammoth, bison, and woolly rhinoceros bones. Radiocarbon dating has revealed that these seeds are about 32,000 years old. The scientist team was studying ground squirrel burrows when they came across this revolutionary discovery. The viable plant material obtained from these seeds was used by a team of scientists at the Russian Academy of Sciences to germinate the plant. They wanted to analyze the plant and compare it to the modern stenophylla. They found that the 2 are almost identical, but the flower shapes of both plants slightly differ. This unbelievable find has led scientists to consider that permafrost might be a depository of an ancient gene pool where many now extinct species might be found and may be resurrected too. Number 6. The largest virus. The largest virus so far known to humanity was discovered by an ex-Marseille University team led by Chantal Abergel and Jean-Michel Claverie. They found it in 2014. It has since been named the Pithovirus sibericum. Though, like any other virus, it's also microscopic, but scientists have declared that it's the biggest virus humanity has ever come across. It's about 50% bigger than the Pandora virus, which was previously the largest virus known to humanity. Pithovirus was first recovered from a 30,000-years-old ice core sample that was acquired from the Siberian permafrost. The virus was reportedly buried under 30 meters of late Pleistocene sediment. Scientists were stunned to find that the virus is still active, despite being buried under permafrost for around 30,000 years. The virus was exposed to amoeba samples collected from riverbanks, and soon enough, the amoeba started dying. When scientists examined these samples, they found that the giant virus had infected the specimens. It is no doubt a very resilient virus. After all, it survived the harsh climate of the tundra for such a long time. It is, however, quite a relief knowing that it doesn't infect humans. But scientists are rightfully concerned about other potentially disastrous microorganisms that are still undiscovered and might reach the human population with the melting ice. Number 7. Remains of Franklin expedition members. The ill-fated Franklin expedition is a well-known historic tragedy. It was a failed British voyage of the Arctic exploration headed by Captain Sir John Franklin. It departed England in 1845 aboard 2 ships named HMS Erebus and HMS Terror. They were supposed to navigate the Northwest Passage in the Canadian Arctic. The expedition met with disaster, and both ships, with a total crew of 129 people, became icebound in Victoria Strait. After remaining icebound for a year, the ships were abandoned in April 1846. By that time, about 24 officers had perished, including Sir John Franklin. The remainder of the men set out for the Canadian mainland, headed by Captain James Fitzjames, and disappeared, leaving no trace. It was assumed that they had also died. But 3 members of the expedition, named John Torrington, William Brain, and John Hartnell, passed away shortly after the ships set sail, and before the ships got stuck, their bodies were buried in ice on Beechey Island in 1846. More than a century later, their bodies were exhumed in 1984 by archaeologists hoping to piece together how they died. The corpses were remarkably preserved, though they looked terrible, with contorted faces, eyes were frozen open, and skin severely frostbitten. Later research indicated that lead poisoning may have been a contributing factor in their deaths. Number 8. Remains of World War I soldiers. Wars often leave a trail of tragedy and devastation in their wake, no matter who wins them. One such tragic tale is of these soldiers who lost their lives in the White War. This was fought between the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the Italian forces for gaining control of a disputed mountainous terrain. During this period, temperatures plummeted, and many companies were wiped out simply because of the harsh weather and snow, and the whereabouts of many soldiers were never found again. No one knew whether they had survived or just perished under the snow. About 100 years later, mummified bodies of 80 or so soldiers who fought in this war were unearthed again. Along with the remains, many White War artifacts were also discovered in the frozen Alps. The latest 2 bodies were found in 2013. During this Cold War, the troops clashed at altitudes of up to 12,000 feet, with temperatures as low as -30 degrees Celsius. According to Marco Balbi, the founder and president of the White War Historical Society, only 1/3 of the 150,000 men who fought in the White War were killed in battle. The rest fell victim to avalanches, landslides, frostbite, and other illnesses caused by the extreme cold. After the battle ended and what was left of the troops departed, salvagers began hiking up to these grounds in order to collect any war relics left behind, and are still finding things and mummified bodies of soldiers even today. Number 9. Massive frozen squid. In the remote Ross Sea of Antarctica, during the season when the sun doesn't set, a fishing crew hauled up a frightening creature from the freezing water. It had tentacles like fire hoses and eyes as big as dinner plates, and was found a mile below the water surface. The monstrous squid is one of the most elusive species inhabiting the sea. It was almost the size of a minibus and weighed about 770 pounds. The animal had reportedly been frozen for around 8 months when it was found. Scientists began thawing the creature, but it wasn't an easy task. They had to use a forklift to maneuver it in the water tank. The squid was a female, and each of its arms measured more than 3 feet in length. 2 of its tentacles might have been double this length if they hadn't been damaged. The colossal squid has been a popular subject in science fiction books and movies, but it's rarely sighted in reality. These squids aren't only huge, but they're also quite resilient and can survive by eating just one fish for months. Their eyes are about 10.6 inches in diameter. This means that the monstrous sea squid has the largest eye in all of the animal kingdom. Number 10. Frozen bone pits of the Himalayas. Possibly the most gruesome of the secrets climate change has revealed to the world are the bone pits of the Himalayas. At a height of 5,029 meters, nestled away in the Himalayas in the lap of Trishul Massif, lies a lake called Rupkund. It is a high-altitude glacial lake in the Uttarakhand state of India. Surrounded by rock-strewn glaciers and snow-capped mountains, this popular trekking destination is quite famous for the hundreds of ancient human skeletons found at its edges. And when the snow melts, the remains lying at the bottom of the 3 meters deep lake are also visible. Initially, investigations led the experts to believe that these remains belong to a group of people caught up in a legendary hailstorm in the 9th century. But subsequent research has revealed that these bones belonged to 3 distinct groups of people who died in different events. These skeletons were first spotted by a forest ranger named Harry Kishan Madwal in 1942. The British government of that time believed these bones belonged to victims of a hidden Japanese force invasion. Wooden artifacts, iron spearheads, rings, and leather slippers were also found with the skeletons. Tourists who visit the lake have developed a habit of taking a number of bones with them. The authorities are trying to stop this and preserve the area as an ecotourism site. Number 11. A Viking's tunic. The rapid melting of glaciers has exposed many items holding immense archaeological importance in recent decades. One such item was found peering out of the ice in Norway, and at first, it looked like any old, rolled-up piece of fabric, but as it turns out, it's a well-preserved tunic. It dates back to 300 AD. Arrow tips and other ancient hunting tools were also found with this piece of clothing. There are prominent signs of wear and tear on the cloth, including sewn-in patches. By this, archaeologists have concluded that multiple people owned this tunic before it was finally abandoned for good. This is the oldest garment discovered in Norway and is around 1700 years old. It's called the Lendbreen tunic and was made from two separate wool fabrics that were woven together. The tunic has no buttons or fasteners, and it was made to be pulled over the head and worn like a sweater. From the location it was discovered, archaeologists have presumed that the person wearing it was hunting reindeer. Number 12. A wolf pup. Neil Lovelace was a gold miner trying to take down a wall in permafrost with the help of a water cannon back in 2016. He was hoping he'd discover some precious gems or riches hidden inside, but was stunned when he found something he hadn't imagined. It was the mummified remains of a wolf cub. It was summertime when Neil found the frozen cub, so his first instinct was to place it in a freezer and wait for the paleontologist to arrive and examine the strange find. After analyzing the remains of a dead cub, the researchers reported that it was a juvenile female puppy. Her body, to their surprise, was entirely intact, only the eyes were missing. According to their analysis, the puppy is around 57,000 years old. It is considered one of the oldest and most complete bodies of a wolf ever found so far. This discovery is extremely helpful, according to researchers, and is aiding them in understanding how wolves might have migrated across the continents of Asia, America, and Europe. Number 13. A surgeon's book. Believe it or not, an old book, most probably from the last expedition of Robert Scott in Antarctica, was found frozen in ice. It was discovered outside Scott's 1911 Terra Nova base in the year 2013. The book originally belonged to George Levick, a surgeon and photographer that was accompanying Scott on his expedition to Antarctica between 1910 to 1913. Scott himself was a British explorer who gained fame during the heroic age of Antarctica's exploration. However, he wasn't quite fortunate, as during his return from the continent in March 1912, he died along with his comrades. This notebook is a welcome photographic exposure record and diary 1910, and George's name can be seen written on the opening pages. It contains his pencil notes detailing the dates, subjects, and exposure details for the photographs he captured in 1911 in Cape Adare. 100 years of water and ice damage has dissolved the binding of this notebook, but the pages were separated and digitized before repairs were initiated. After reconstruction, it was returned to Antarctica and is now one of 11,500 artifacts at Cape Evans. Number 14. The Dead Zone. It's no secret that ice can preserve life for millions of years, but is there a frozen place that is utterly lifeless? Well, yes, and it's Antarctica. Experts have no way of explaining what they're now calling the Dead Zone. A team of researchers on an expedition to Antarctica found a region in the icy continent that was completely void of life. It can be considered the most lifeless place on the planet, as even microbes don't exist here, and microbes can survive literally everywhere. The nematodes are a kind of microbe that are found everywhere, but not in the trans-Antarctic mountains of Antarctica. Researchers weren't able to find a single speck of microbial DNA. They thought it was a mistake, so they tried multiple times, but the results were the same. It's like life never made its way here. Maybe it's because of the extremely low temperatures, but no one can say for sure why there is no sign of life in this millions of years old terrain. Number 15. An extensive mountain range. In East Antarctica, this subglacial mountain range is named Gamburtsev Mountain Range. It lies under the lofty Dome A, close to the southern pole of inaccessibility. This was discovered by the Third Soviet Antarctic Expedition in 1958 and has therefore been named after Soviet geophysicist Grigory A. Gamburtsev. The 1,200 kilometers long mountain range is around 2,700 meters high, but nearly 600 meters of ice and snow lie covering these mountains. It's approximately the same size as the European Alps. There's very little data about how these mountains formed, but according to experts, the main features of the range formed nearly 34 million years ago. The current models suggest that the eastern Antarctic ice sheet was formed by the glaciers sliding down the Gamburtsev Range near the end of the Eocene. Even today, it's not possible to see these mountains as they're still buried under a thick sheet of ice. It's quite a fascinating discovery that makes you wonder whether these mountains were ever above the ice and did life exist here at that time. Do you think this range was bustling with plant and animal life at some point in history? Tell us in the comments below.